What's up, guys? Today we are talking about weather manipulation, cloud seeding, and the political agenda related to it, and whether or not it's fact or fiction. All right, guys, so one of my Facebook friends shared a post recently, and I'm going to actually block their name out for privacy reasons. Don't want anyone to get upset. And it got me thinking. So in this video, we are going on a deep dive when it comes to cloud seeding, weather manipulation, and the political agenda behind it.
Even I was shocked by what I found.
Feel like a documentarist. All right, guys, so this takes us back to the 1960s to a government-sponsored program called Project Storm Fury. We're going to go ahead and roll that tape.
1944 saw the beginning of a whole new era in hurricane tracking. Using a powerful new tool, radar, military crews began flying into hurricanes to determine their strength and direction. While better tracking could save lives, it could not protect vulnerable coastlines from spiraling property damage. In the early 1960s, scientists believed they had an answer.
If only the force of the hurricane's winds could be reduced, the toll in death and damage could be greatly lessened. Is there a way?
The way was Project Storm Fury, an active assault on the hurricane. A fleet of planes would drop silver iodide into hurricane clouds. Ice crystals would form, disrupting the storm's delicate heat balance and sapping its strength. But after 20 years, Storm Fury never produced conclusive results. The project was doomed by heavy restrictions on seeding hurricanes too close to land and by doubts about its scientific assumptions. Today, scientists have turned again to tracking hurricanes and improving the accuracy of their forecasts. Advanced satellites allow them to monitor the entire life cycle of a hurricane. But they still lack what they need most: detailed information about the vast tropical environment in which the hurricane forms.
All right, guys, so weather modification right here, according to wikipedia.org, weather modification is the act of intentionally manipulating or altering the weather. The most common form of weather modification is cloud seeding, which increases rainfall or snowfall, usually for the purpose of increasing local water supply. Weather modification can also have the goal of preventing damaging weather, such as hail or hurricanes, from occurring, or provoking damaging weather against an enemy as a tactic of military or economic warfare, like Operation Popeye, where clouds were seeded to prolong the monsoon in Vietnam. Weather modification in warfare has been banned by the United Nations under the Environmental Modification Convention. All right, guys, so we do know now that the government has indeed got the ability to control certain aspects of the weather. And also, Dubai actually has a way to control its own weather, being that it's actually in the desert. You guys should definitely check out as much information on that as you can. All right, so let's move a little bit forward here. So in 2008 Summer Olympics, the Chinese government used cloud seeding to break up clouds and force rain to fall outside of Beijing, ensuring clear skies for the opening ceremony. And the 2022 Winter Olympics, China used man-made snow for the games. The water used to make the snow came from rainfall and surface runoff and could be recycled for other purposes.
In July, the Chinese Communist Party marked its centenary with a ceremony attended by tens of thousands of people on Tiananmen Square. Now, a report has just been released by Beijing's Tsinghua University, revealing that the government artificially changed the weather for that event. Peter O'Brien, France 24's technology editor, is here to tell us more. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Annette.
It's not the first time that China has reportedly hacked the weather for a major event. Most famously, they did it for the Beijing Olympics back in 2008. So what made it different this time around?
Well, it was as if by magic this time. So the centenary celebration started about 8 a.m. and it was overcast conditions at the time. And then shortly after the events, the rain just started chucking it down. It was as if the weather was as perfectly choreographed as the event itself. And compared to other events, well, like the Olympics, for instance, where we weren't sure what effects exactly were happening as a result of China's attempts to modify the weather. Well, this time we've got this peer-reviewed report quite clearly showing that because of the weather modification, well, the pollution dropped in Beijing. It went from moderate to good on the World Health Organization scale, and that's a result of this cloud seeding technology, artificially creating more precipitation. Now, China has clearly refined this technology after spending billions of euros on it and testing it extensively. They employ tens of thousands of people in their weather modification bureau across China. And last year, they announced they were planning to extend this program to cover an area spanning 5.5 million square kilometers. That's 1.5 times the size of India. The idea is not just then to reduce smog, to make pretty pictures for events in big cities, but to help rural areas fight droughts, preventing hail, destroying crops, and even stopping wildfires and dust storms.
Now, rainmaking is no longer just for wizards or various other people who have so-called special skills. So explain to us, how does cloud seeding actually work?
Well, the main thing you need to remember is that you need a cloud to begin with. We're not just talking about creating clouds out of nothing. This is just about enhancing how much rain they produce. So if you think a cloud is made up of tiny cold droplets of water or ice, and they're generally too small to fall down as rain, but when they coalesce, they become heavy enough for gravity to pull them down. Imagine rain on a window, for instance. The smallest droplets stay stuck there while the bigger ones start to fall down. So if you can put something in the cloud which these rain droplets sort of will gather round, then you're much more likely to form rain. That substance is usually, you can use a chemical like silver iodide or potassium iodide, or simply dry ice or even table salt to make this happen.
All right, guys, here's another great interview that happened roughly about 11 years ago on CBS regarding weather manipulation and cloud seeding. Let's check it out together.
And now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far, it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
Was alleged to. Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops? And if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine.
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes. All of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting. Professor Michio Kaku, thank you so much.
Just like anything in the world that's developed, it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. What do you guys think about this video? Leave it in the comments. You're watching On Air with Nick Driver, the Nick Driver podcast. You guys have a great day. And I do want to tell you guys, thank you guys for mentioning for me to cover this. To be completely honest with you, I really thought weather manipulation and cloud seeding was just, hearsay, maybe conspiracy theorist stuff. Looking at it now, I'm definitely a believer in cloud seeding and weather manipulation. To what degree, we don't know yet. But you guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Take care. You watch it On Air with Nick Driver, Nick Driver podcast.